Hey guys, the other day I was driving around and I noticed this really weird little mist coming out of the air vents on my Jeep. This is a 2001 Jeep Grand Cherokee limited edition. Basically, I looked it up and I found out that the problem was a leaking heater core. Now, to confirm that, I checked over here. If you just feel the carpet, it's gonna be leaking down here. Now, the dashboard's already been removed. There's a video that I'll link on the description to get that dashboard removed. But if you want to confirm that your heater core is leaking, if you look, you're gonna get under the dashboard here, and you're gonna see this bolt. And you're probably going to see some coolant running down this over all the way to the bottom and just collecting at the bottom. There's a towel there. I'm just trying to dry out as much of it as possible. But this is all soaked up with coolant or antifreeze. But what I wanted to show you was how to take out the HVAC unit, which houses the AC evaporator and the heater core, as well as, I can't remember what the doors are. It basically just controls all your the airflow and stuff in here. You probably want to get all three of those replaced, because this project is something that you probably only want to do one time. It takes about 12 hours or so to do. Now, I don't know much about cars or anything, but I wanted to show you guys this just because it was so difficult for me this first time. Now, here is the main stuff you're gonna need for this whole project, for replacing the heater core, the evaporator, and the doors. You're gonna need a Torx 30, so this one, a Torx 30, a Phillips screwdriver. You probably want to have a couple of different sizes, because there's just different places that you want to use you'll need to use the Phillips screwdriver in. You're gonna need one of these pry bars. This thing comes in very handy. It's only like $4. I'll put links in the description for all this stuff. You're gonna need a couple of these pliers, just good pliers, and a toolkit like this one. Now, the main ones you're gonna need are a 10 millimeter, just a normal one, and a 10 millimeter, a deep 10 millimeter. Also a 13, or over here it's a 1/2. I guess that's a 1/2 inch. So those, and you're also going to need some extenders. It's good to have this big one and this one, because sometimes there is one bolt where you're going to need to use both of them, just to make it easier to take out the bolts. And then obviously your parts. Here's the evaporator, and here's the heater core. So to take out the HVAC over here, this is the HVAC. There's gonna be these two screws at the bottom, over here and over here, and these match up to these two, this one and this one. These are just 10 millimeter bolts. Now, the more complicated one is up here. This one's complicated because you have to get it from the other side. So you have to pop the hood, go over here, and you're gonna have to move the reservoir, the cooling reservoir, so that's gonna be sitting over here. And it's gonna be held down by 2 Phillips screws. So just, it's gonna be one over here and one over here. Take those out, and then there's gonna be a little connector here that you're gonna have to disconnect right here. So there's just a clip there at the top that you just press down and take out. And you can just move this out. Oh, you may want to have one of these siphoning pumps just so you can empty out the reservoir. Or you can just move it and just empty it out. I mean, you probably want to get some fresh coolant in here, plus this looks pretty nasty, so you probably want to wash that out also. So after you move that, the next thing you want to do is over here there's these 2 hoses that are held by this plastic clip. Unclip both of them. These are the hoses that go over to the heater core. Now it's just gonna make it easier for you if you unclip them. Then you're gonna have this thing. I have no idea what this thing is, but this is going to be mounted, and so it's gonna be held down by this 10mm bolt right there, and then another one, and then a nut. One of these, or this 10mm nut that's gonna be over there on one of these studs. Now there's this other thing, I don't know the names for any of this stuff, but there's this thing that's being held down by a couple of other studs. They're also 10mm. You also want to take that out just so you can have more clearance. And then you're gonna have these, I believe these are 13. Let me just double check. Yeah, these are 13mm nuts that hold down these 2 lines. I'm not sure if you can see them, but those 2 lines right there, those are for your air conditioner, or air conditioning system. So if you follow this pipe right here, where you usually would charge your AC, if you follow that, it'll lead you to those 2 pipes. And this is where you're gonna need one of these 13mm heads with an attachment to get those out. So after you get those out, the next one that you need to worry about is kind of complicated. It's another 13mm. It's gonna be this one right here. So it's pretty long. Or actually, let me see. That one is actually a 10mm, not a 13. So it's a 10mm. And that one is the one that corresponds to this hole that I was talking about. So you have to remove that one, otherwise you are never going to take out the HVAC unit. So after you take that one out with your wrench and extender and a 10mm head, you're gonna pry out the HVAC unit, and these 2 hoses, which are the ones we unclipped over there before, are the ones that correspond over to the heater core, which is back here. So see how there's these two hoses? Now, don't worry about bending these rods. It doesn't matter. You're gonna replace the heater core. But here, just to prove that it was leaking. See how there's all that green stuff, and it was leaking down. So now to get those hoses off, basically you pry this out as much as you can. Be careful not to damage anything. And then you get your pliers and clamp these, or squeeze these clamps down and just move them back. Don't worry about taking out the hose, just try to get these clamps back towards the back so they're not in the way. These hoses are very tight and they will have a bunch of coolant in them. So what you need to do is, as you're pulling on the HVAC unit, you are gonna reach down and over, and you're gonna use your pliers to just clamp down around this and just try and twist it up, loosen it up. That's why the rods on the tubes over here are bent, because I didn't really care and I just needed to get those hoses off. So just twist them out. You will want to have something to catch the coolant after you pull that out, because otherwise it's going to leak everywhere. Your carpet's probably already wet, but it's gonna leak at least almost two of these full, and these are 36 ounces. So there is quite a bit of coolant in there. You just want to stick this underneath and maybe hold it with your foot while you're going over the HVAC unit and squeezing these out, and then just hold the line down while you hold this and just empty out as much of it as possible, and then you can just go empty that out in your coolant gallon. And so do the same with both of these hoses, and then basically you can just pry out the HVAC unit. So there's these 3 bolts that are holding the whole thing in there. These 2 that are accessible from the inside, and this one that's over under the hood. After you take that out, you go over here, and there's a bunch of screws that you have to take out. Here's all the screws. They're all Phillips head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then there's these little metal clamps also. So there's 5 of those. And so you just go around the edge and unscrew all the screws around. Take these controllers off, and then after you've got everything unscrewed, you should be able to just lift this out. You shouldn't have to force anything. If you're forcing anything, you're doing it wrong. Just go around the edge again and check for any screws that are still in place. So you take that off, and here's the evaporator. Basically you just slide that out, and this isn't bad, but I just don't want to have to do this again. And then there's the heater core back here. For that one, you just make sure you undo these silver clamps, and then you just pull it out. And see how there's just a bunch of coolant all dried up on it. And then basically you just put the new core in, the new evaporator, and the new doors. I should have gotten the doors, but I wasn't thinking. One more thing I just noticed, on the new evaporator, you don't have the bolts. So you're gonna have to take them off of your old evaporator. And to do this, you use a Torx 30 bit, and it's kind of awkward, and you feel like you're gonna get cut really bad on this grid. So get one of these screwdrivers and get your pliers. Grab onto it and twist it, and that should release it, and then you can reuse these bolts. Another thing for these bolts here that are attached to the evaporator, you can take these off and reuse them on your new one. You're gonna need this. Let's see if it can focus. .732, and then basically you just put it on there. And unscrew it. It is pretty stiff at first, but you'll get it. Just make sure you don't break it, otherwise you're gonna have to go to the hardware store and find another bolt or something you can use. Anyways, I'll keep recording and see if I can find out any other little things here and there. Alright, so I was able to put the dashboard back together, replace the heater core and the AC evaporator. However, after driving for a couple of days, as you can tell, there was still a leak. I didn't want to have to take this whole thing apart, and I knew that the leak was coming from the evaporator hoses, because as I was putting it back together, I got impatient and I didn't check on this side before I put the hoses back together, and I ended up having this hose that goes on top, this one up here. Yeah, that one goes on top of the other one. I ended up pulling that one down to the bottom fitting down there, and so they were crisscrossed, so they didn't have as much room to work with. So I couldn't get the bottom one in all the way. So I didn't want to have to take the whole dashboard apart. So I figured I could try this, and if this didn't work, then I would take the whole dash apart again, just to fix that. Fortunately, you can take out everything here. Basically, you're going to have the reservoir being held by two Phillips screws right here, these two. Next, you're going to have this. This looks like a computer or some chip, giant chip. You're going to have this thing here. That's going to be held down by a nut over here, a 10mm nut, and then a bolt down here, 10mm bolt. After you take those off, you're going to pull this up so it releases over there. Pull it out, And then it's going to have this giant connector on the back that's being held down by an 8mm bolt. That one is over, it's over here. So unscrew that, pop that out, and you can take this out. And then you're gonna have this other chip, whatever these are. This one is going to be held down in here by the two other studs there with just 10mm bolts. And then there's this one at the bottom. It screws down there. Get it by going under the tire here. Another nut and another bolt, or actually the bolt's over here, so it's just going to be a nut. So you take that out, take off these three connectors. This one is the white one, this first one's the white one, this is a gray one, and this one's the black one. And take this out. Then move all these harnesses, all these wire harnesses out of the way. Just wrap them over there. And then you're able to reclaim hoses again. You're gonna run into these clamps. And these are a real pain to get off. There are special clamps. I'll put a link in the description for the special clamps, so you guys can do it easier than I did. But basically, you're gonna need pliers, and you just squeeze those two ends together and try and get it out. You're gonna have to be patient because these are a pain to get off unless you have those special hose clamp pliers. Now, I didn't want to use these again because they're just a pain, so I just went over to O'Reilly's or AutoZone and bought these clamps. They're a little bit bigger, but that's fine. Now I'm just in the process of putting the hose back together, or back in place. Make sure that you put the bottom one in at the bottom and the top one at the top, and we'll see how it works afterwards. Alright, when you put these hoses back on, make sure you've got the clamps in there first, and that you have them pointed the opposite direction. So on that one, on the first one, the bolt is pointing that way towards the engine. That way I can use this and get it in there and just tighten it up. And then this other one is going to be facing the opposite way towards the outside of the car, so that so they won't interfere with each other. And then just get the hose in there and push it in as much as you can. It should go in pretty deep. I mean, you don't want it leaking. So push it in as far as you can. And then slide the clamp down that way. And then just tighten it up with your ratchet. Got the two hoses back in place there with the new clamps. So now it's just putting everything back in here, and we'll see if it works. Also, I guess if it's summer and you run into this problem with the heater core, you could just take out these two hoses and get a coupler that's kind of U-shaped like this, and then just stick it into one hose and the other hose, and then bypass the heater core altogether so you don't have to do that work. That's if you don't want to spend 12 hours tearing your dashboard apart. You can just stick the coupler in there, clamp it down with some clamps like the ones I bought, and bypass the heater core altogether. The only thing that's going to happen is you're not going to have heat until you replace the heater core, but that's a temporary fix if you don't want to have to do all that work. So let's start putting all this stuff back together. See if it works. Computer or chip, whatever that thing is. There's the 2 bolts for the 2 nuts, and then the one under here under the tire, which is all the way back there. And for that you're gonna need a deep 10mm socket. Such as this one. That nut put back in place. And you want to connect these connectors. Let's see. It was gray in the middle. Actually, white over here. Or I mean gray over here. White in the middle. And the black one over there. Make sure they click in. You don't have any other wires in the way. Next, move this harness back out of the way. And we'll put this one in there. Now you want to plug this connector back in first. And then use an 8mm socket to put that back in. Sure that's on there tight, and then you want to put this side in first, or no, put this side, this bottom side in first, and move this, get this off. Get that side in first, and then just push it in. It should fall in place, and then you can use the 10mm nut over here. Put the reservoir back. Move this harness out of the way. And the reservoir should just fall in place here. It's being held down by the 2 Phillips screwdrivers over here, or screws over here. The reservoir back in. Now it's just a matter of reconnecting all these plugs. So this one's for the air conditioning clutch. This one is for The water sensor here, the coolant sensor, checks to make sure that you have enough coolant. This one over here for I have no idea what. So once you have all those reconnected, check your coolant, make sure you've got enough in there, and check your radiator. And that should be okay. And we can just turn on the car and hope that doesn't leak anymore. Anyways, I hope that helps someone out. We'll see if I run into any other problems. Oh, one last thing. Reconnect your battery terminal. And we should be good to go. Hope that helps someone out. If it helped you out, remember to comment, favorite, like, or share the video so other people can get a chance to view it also. Anyways, thanks for watching.